You just mentioned landfills, and you mentioned obviously the impact that all that waste has on the planet. And it is one of our questions, indeed. Like, can you paint a picture of maybe what will happen to the earth if we do not start composting more and learn from nature, and if we do not reduce perishable waste?
Yeah, so there's a document that I've found very, very helpful. It's called Project Drawdown. The subtext to which is the world's most comprehensive plan ever proposed to slow and reverse global climate change. And so, very creatively named. Um, so, in short, like the situation is very dire, right? We are driving full speed off of a cliff from which we cannot return. And so we need to act like very urgently to rise to the like challenge and occasion that the science and data shows us is happening before us. Um, and and understanding what levers could most contribute towards both the problem, the accelerants of climate change, as well as the potential solutions, is really important. And so Project Drawdown found that the food and agricultural industries contains within it from a sector approach, the highest potential to slow or reverse climate change. And so that's the sector we're working on. And um, and we think that by helping municipalities and communities develop alternatives to landfills for their food waste, we can actually turn cities, which are historically massive polluters, into an engine for a regenerative soil economy. And if you can do that, you can make really high quality soil available to nearby farmers, thereby, supporting small farmers who are often like dying off or being bought by other conglomerates, if not like turned into suburbia. This relocalizes our food system, improves health access. It has benefits on air, water, and soil quality. And so I'm giving a rambling answer, but basically it's imperative. It's not optional, and we are doing our mightiest to convey this to anyone who will listen, from people involved in policy to the heads of companies to conversations of three people at a time, right? There is a very direct line to what you do with your banana peel and runaway climate change. And we want to invite people to consider that what you do with your banana peel and coffee grounds is just as important as how long you shower or what kind of vehicle you're driving, or where your electricity is coming from, because measurably it has just as big an impact. Um, so so yeah, I guess that's, if that answers your question. If it doesn't, I'm happy to say more.
So, for building off of that simple food scrap, if many people locally were to start composting, how would that affect our local environment in Cleveland? Like, what kind of changes could we expect to see with kind of our weather or our lake? Is there anything specific that leads into that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that it's important to like note the the shortcomings, right? Like I often say that like even if we Rust Belt riders were to wave a wand, right, and say everyone must compost their food scraps in Cuyahoga County now because we have to, right? There isn't the processing capacity regionally to even compost all that material, right? So like we need, so and I think this gets back to the earlier question too, and you'll have to remind me of the question I'm answering right now. Um, but I think that a big problem with a lot of the like language and way we talk about climate change like misplaces the blame from these larger like systemic power structures to the individual, right? And so I don't for a second want like you to walk away thinking that like if all of us just started composting our banana peels, climate change is solved, right? Like we need massive energy companies to divest from like carbon emitting energy sources. We need policy changes on national and global levels. We need, to tax carbon. We need to do a whole bunch of other things. And so I just think it's like a folly of a lot of environmentalists to think that like lots of small individual activities is like like the blame has been shifted to us when so many of the emissions and so much of the damage that's been brought is from, legacy industries, really bad policy, etc. But in terms of like what would it look like regionally? What do we dream about? What's our utopia, right? I think that if we were to get to a place where we could be more like Vermont or Massachusetts or the state of Washington, where there is law and policy dictating that food is not allowed to go to landfill. Like that's a world we can conceive of because it exists elsewhere in this country. What would that look like, right? Well, first of all, our struggling and aging farmers who are constantly under threat of consolidation and of suburban sprawl would have access to really high quality, affordable soil repair tools such as compost, potting soils, and as a result, they would be able to grow more produce for longer periods of time and sell into markets like Cleveland, Akron, Canton, and Columbus, and Dayton, and you name it. They would be less reliant on artificial chemicals and fertilizers, which, as we know, have greatly exacerbated algal blooms in one of the world's largest reservoirs of fresh water. And we would see improvement in air quality because soil has this like purification quality. We would see an emergence and strengthening of spin-off industries. More companies like ours would exist. Nurseries would flourish, and like place-based, stable green jobs would be viewed in equal measure and importance as like the installation of solar panels or wind turbines, because I think that we can dream about getting to a place where natural solutions are viewed as just as credible as technological solutions. And yeah, I think that those are some. It's honestly a bit of it's frustrating to me when like the only option that people are given is like you have to drive a Tesla or you have to install solar panels to be perceived as an environmentalist, and like things like compost and like where and how you're sourcing your food is somehow viewed as like not related to that at all. And yet the latter is far more accessible for a far wider variety of people than the former. And as we all know, we don't live in a particularly affluent region of the country. And so we need a bigger tent for people to feel like they're actively contributing and frontline activists in this movement. Otherwise, we'll get there.